Hello, everybody. Welcome to the community consultation meeting for the Midtown Working Group's vision for Midtown and Canada Square site. We're just going to wait a minute or two here and let people join in. We see the numbers are growing. And so maybe we'll wait another minute or two and then we'll get started. And it looks like we're getting closer to the number of registered. So I think it's probably a good time to start. Um, Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Teixeira. I'm a community planner for the City of Toronto. We're here tonight for the community consultation meeting on the Midtown Working Group's vision for the Canada Square and Midtown um, and the surrounding area. So just quickly before we get started, I'd like to do an introduction of panel members, and then we'll move to some opening remarks. I did want to note from city planning, we have Robert Orsini here, and Robert is a planner in our office. He'll be helping out with the meeting. Oren Tamir, who's the manager, is also here. Andrea Bake from our Parks Department is here. Um, as well, Andy Gort, president of SARA, is on the panel tonight. The South Eglinton Ratepayers and Residents Association. David Tickle, president of Quora. Both of them also working group members are here. Councillors Robinson and Matlow are here as well, and Parker Samuels and Rajvi Patel, also from councillor's office. So I'm going to quickly put up presentation and get things started for the evening. And I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on in the Young Eglinton area is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And a brief overview of the agenda tonight. We're going to start with opening remarks from the councillors. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here and the purpose of the meeting. We're going to go over the policy context, and then the Midtown Working Group is going to present their vision and priorities. We'll talk quickly about feasibility and implementation of those priorities, and then move to a comments and questions period. So I'd like to invite Councillor Matlow now if he has any opening remarks.
Thank you, Alex. And before I begin, I just received a text from Councillor Mike Cole. He is making an effort to participate in the meeting. So he just asked if somebody could make sure that he gets the link that he'll be able to get on. So if you could ask Robert or one of you to provide him the link, I expect Mike to join us soon. So thank you, Alex, and hello to you all. I really appreciate everybody who's taking this lovely October evening to be with us tonight to discuss um, a um, a place in our community that I believe, and I believe all of us share this, that holds so much potential to contribute to the quality of life of our Midtown Yonge and Eglinton community if it's done right and if it's done well. The the Yonge and Eglinton neighborhood in which I live, in which all of us live, has faced unprecedented development pressure over the past 2 or 3 decades. And many of us remember when the provincial government in the early 2000s designated our area as an urban growth center. It was for many of the right reasons. It was about having having more density in certain areas of cities in southern Ontario to mitigate urban sprawl onto the Oak Ridges Moraine, onto the Greenbelt, and the principle of that is just. What the government never did, though, is ensure that our quality of life would keep up with the pace of that growth. So the developers were sent to areas like downtown and Willowdale and Yonge and Eglinton and elsewhere to develop. But what was not assured in any policy, in any legislation, was that we'd be able to squeeze into the subway during morning and afternoon rush hours, that our kids would have school capacity at our local schools rather than seeing those signs that the TDSB has to put up saying that if you move into that, that condo, that your kids may not be able to go to the local school, which is wrong. That we would have enough park space to be able to have recreation and a place to breathe. And during this pandemic, I think all of us have experienced our parks in a different way as well. They're so important to our mental well-being and our physical well-being alike. And arts and cultural priorities and educational priorities, post-secondary opportunities, etc. And as much as councillors Cole and Robinson and I work within the limited toolbox that the City of Toronto has to be able to fight for all of these priorities, the system is set up that's weighed in the development industry's favor. In fact, they donate a lot to the provincial parties to make sure that that happens. This current government has even made things worse in the past 3 years. Councillor Robinson and I worked very hard, very closely with our community, along with planning on the Midtown in Focus secondary plan that would have returned a lot of the focus to our quality of life rather than the developer's financial interests. But because cities are subservient to provinces constitutionally, it had to be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and he took out a red pen and he crossed off a lot of things, mostly to do with our quality of life, and replaced it with excessive heights for the development industry's pleasure, and more. So we are using whatever tools we have, but these are all on private lands, dealing with private developers who then go to the provincial appeals body and get everything they want. What makes Canada Square different is that it's owned by the City of Toronto. And there are rights, a lease agreement that Oxford owns, and there's an existing lease agreement that goes for many decades into the future, never mind the new lease agreement. So that's a reality that we have to face. In 2018, I was successful in getting an agreement with CREATE-TO, which is the city body that's responsible for redevelopment of public lands, to ensure that the applicant couldn't appeal to what used to be called the OMB. Now it's called the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is a leverage for us. But there are many other considerations that we have to face. Oxford put in an application a Christmas ago that after, many weeks, if not months, of consultation with the community on their part, that I think gave us all some good reason to hope that a good proposal was on its way. I think it's fair to say was underwhelming to understate it when they submitted it. It had a lot of tall towers, and yes, some open space, but it didn't speak to our quality of life. It didn't speak to the services that we need to provide to a growing community. And the community, some of whom you see here tonight on the panel, looked at that proposal and said, wait a sec, that's not good enough. That's not good enough for Yonge and Eglinton. This is a historic opportunity at Canada Square to do something right. And we came together as a group. We moved a motion at City Council to strike a working group, unprecedented opportunity, to try to turn this process on its head and say, rather than simply react to Oxford's proposal, we should set the narrative as a community as to what we want out of Canada Square. And the beauty of that process was not only was there a very clear vision coming out of the community, but it's one that I know that both Councillor Cole and Councillor Robinson and I believe in as well. one that focuses on a remarkable park space for the community, a new public school for the community, opportunities for post-secondary students in our community, arts and cultural opportunities for our community. And unlike some of the fights that we hear about citywide about do we welcome or reject opportunities for affordability, we asked for a higher number, a higher percentage, 25% of any new housing should be affordable so that people can continue to live in the heart of our city rather than being pushed out by a city that gets more and more expensive every day. This is a vision that speaks to affordability. This is a vision that speaks to open space and park space. This is a vision that speaks to education, keeping our kids at local schools, celebrating arts and culture, and a vision that contributes to our basic quality of life. Yes, will there be opportunities for employment? Sure, there should be. We want a complete community. We don't want just a bedroom community in the sky. We want a complete community with educational, employment, and people living here. But there's got to be that balance, and that's what we believe in. So tonight is your opportunity to opine, to look at the vision that we are proposing, to look at the report the city staff have presented, and ultimately tell us what you want to see out of Canada Square. You have my commitment, and I know that Councillor Robinson will speak to this as well, along with Councillor Cole, that our job is to reflect and represent our needs as a Midtown community. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done collaboratively with our planning staff and with our community members who sat in our working group to achieve what we want to share with you today, that you'll hear a bit more about from David and Andy. And I look forward to hearing from you about what you like, what you'd like more of, and ultimately how we work together to achieve our goals. And on that note, I'm going to conclude my remarks and hand it over to my colleague, Councillor Robinson, who has been a very, very important part of this process and a great advocate for our community. Jay?
Thank you very much, Councillor Matlow. And I think you've done a great job summarizing it, but I'll add a few notes to the overriding message. And that is, Midtown is at a breaking point. I've said it 100 times. Just in my area alone, which is the Northeast Quadrant, there are 20 plus developments either in construction or under review in the Northeast Quadrant of Yonge and Eglinton. Today at North York Community Council, I had 6 applications of I don't think there was many others outside of mine. So it's a very busy spot, too busy. And I'm hearing from residents that they're getting fed up. So earlier this year, we received a report from City Planning indicating that Yonge and Eglinton has 28,000 new residential units built, approved, and under review. That's a lot. And the construction that's happening as a result are, these issues are creating road safety issues, dust issues, livability issues, quite frankly. And so I hear about it all the time, how difficult it is to get outside and engage with your neighbor, or with taking your dogs for walks, or just accessing green space. So the number one thing that's problematic, and I've spoken about this for years, as has my colleagues, is the infrastructure is not there to support the growth. We need parks and community space, and I'm not going to repeat everything that Councillor Matlow said, but that has been a focal point for me until I'm blue in the face, parks and community space in particular. So we are working, I'm happy to report, we're working on upgrades to the Red Path Parkette. It's going to be stunning when we're finished. It's going to take a couple of years to make it happen, but it is not a big space. We're working with a micro park, I would call it, but it will be wonderful, and it will really overhaul the area. But it's a very small park. And having said that, I'm very happy that it is happening. And what we're trying to do is chip away at that park deficit that we have in this area. And we're trying to secure park-led dedications and public realm improvements and POPs and all these things. But boy, it's a grind. It's very difficult. And we do find when we go out to purchase parks, meaning the parks department, they have a hard time competing with the big fat wallets that the developers have. So that's why I'm framing this up to say to you that I think this is a very exciting opportunity, Canada Square, for much needed amenities for the residents of Midtown, all the residents. And it's a very dense environment, becoming more so. So I do hope, given the fact that we own this land and it's a very significant piece of land, I do hope that we get this right. And I have to say, as the chair of the TTC, and even prior to being the chair of the TTC, I was very concerned about the strain on the Yonge line. I ride the Rocket every day, or did prior to COVID. I was on the subway system at least twice a day, if not more. And I endured the breakdowns, the capacity issues. Some people get on at Yonge and Eglinton and head north to York Mills to then try to travel south. Um, Andy Gort will probably speak on this more extensively later, but it's a huge problem at not just Yonge and Eglinton, but also York Mills and Lawrence. People can't get on the subway. So this is a big concern for me as the chair of the TTC, and how we facilitate that. And with this level of growth, it's quite frankly terrifying. So we need to address that. And that's a side note, but what I really want to talk about today as I wrap up here is just this once in a lifetime opportunity to secure significant open green space for Midtown residents and create a bit of a landmark in our city. Um, I think it is exciting, and I just want to do a shout out to all the people. It's hard to name people, but certainly some of the individuals on the panel tonight, the residents, not the councillors, have worked extremely hard, extensive volunteer hours. I think Councillor Matlow will agree with me that we're blown away by the level of commitment from the local residents. Tom, Andy, David, like, it's phenomenal work that's come out of the community. I've never seen this level of engagement in my life, quite frankly, and I've seen a lot of engagement, so has Josh. So it's very impressive, and we're very grateful for it. And you're going to see more and hear more about that tonight. But I do want to wrap up by simply thanking everybody, also my colleagues on council, but thank everybody, all members of the Midtown Working Group, for your efforts over the past few months. It's been really wonderful to watch unfold. So thank you. And that concludes my remarks.
And I believe that Mike has arrived. Mike, are you there? Mike Cole?
There he is. Yeah. Just turn on your camera, Mike.
We don't
There
hear
he
you or
is.
see you yet, Mike.
Okay, you see me? Hear
Yes,
me?
you're on. You're on.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Councillor Robinson, we've been at this since early this morning, Councillor Robinson. We just rubber stamp developments. That's all we do here. And anyways, I think we did about 6 this morning. So, I mean, this is a welcome change here that I think, as Josh said, there's quite a unique opportunity because of that proviso that the developer in this case cannot appeal to the whatever it's called. I call it the Vatican. It can't appeal to the Vatican. So we really have a decision to be made by local residents and by the City of Toronto. So this is quite, and perhaps this model somehow can be replicated in other developments to get developers to agree that the approval conditions are based on the fact you won't appeal to the Vatican. So that's what maybe we should follow as we try to deal with this explosion of condominium madness here all over the city. Uh, just I think the key ingredient here is that you've got Councillors Robinson and especially Councillor Matlow, who's really forged a new path forward on this. We've done things out of the box. I know a lot of people were quite concerned as we didn't follow the normal processes, and everybody got pretty nervous. But I think that we did the right thing together because this is a iconic piece of property here. It's the heart of the city. It means so much, not only to Midtown, but the whole city. And so we had to do things in an extraordinary way. And I think that's why we're here today. And we're here today because of the citizens. We've got resilient, persevering residents association and leadership here that's unprecedented anywhere in the city of Toronto, really. And they've stuck to their civic commitment through this. And as councillors, we cannot really get anything really accomplished without that type of heroic, really perseverance or stubbornness, whatever you want to call it, by our local residents. I want to thank them and the work they're doing for not only for this application, but for the whole middle of the city. That's what makes this possible and unique. It's a unique opportunity, and just to let you know that I have Oxford is at both corners of my ward. I have Oxford also applying for 10 towers at the Yorkdale site. Uh, so they want 10 30-story towers on that site, but that is owned by them, the most profitable mall in North America. And in this case here, we're lucky that it's still city owned. So I'm looking forward to dealing with Oxford at the other end, but I don't have the citizenry that's engaged up in the top corner as I do here, in Midtown. And just the last thing, I'll just want to comment back to what Josh said about the tools, the limited tools we have. And here we're using unusual tools because of the agreement that they can't appeal upstream. Is that I think I passed a private members bill back in 2001 or something to abolish the Ontario Municipal Board. It took years and years. We got that abolished. Or no, that was the bill. But then it took till 2018 or something. I can't even keep track of the years. We finally got it abolished. Then it came back. It is bigger and stronger than ever. This Ontario Land Tribunal that 99% of the people in Ontario or Toronto don't even know exists. Yet it is the planning body for the city of Toronto and the province. Totally unaccountable, totally without scrutiny, and they can essentially do whatever they want. It's really an extension of Build. I don't know if you know Build, but basically Build has moved right into the provincial government. So anyways, the critical thing here is that Councillor Robinson and myself are going to do everything we can to support Councillor Matlow as he leads the way on this and to support the residents of all four corners of Yonge and Eglinton to create something that we can show as a model for the future of how you plan in a very challenging time. So I look forward to working, and I know my Linda McCarthy has been very involved in this with my staff, and she's on the line here too. So we're ready to keep our sleeves rolled up and support Councillor Matlow and Councillor Robinson as we push ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillors. So I'm going to get into the presentation, and I'm going to start with a little bit of background. Now, I am aware that I'm committing a major faux pas with presentation here tonight. I've added a lot of text on these slides, and hopefully I will go through it very quickly. I want to establish a bit of background before we get into the vision, but I will go through it as much as possible. And I've been informed that the meeting is being recorded, so if you want to relive the magic later, send me an email, and we can get you a copy. So we just want to talk about how we got here and the purpose of the meeting. This is not a meeting on the development application. This is a meeting on the Midtown Working Group's vision for Canada Square. So Canada Square is on lands owned by the TTC and as an agent for the city. Their majority of the lands are encumbered with a lease. So the existing leases have terms up to 2051 and to 2070. And so those uses that are now on the site are, and the site itself is under lease to Oxford until those times. And I'm just going to move my screen around here so I can see my slides properly. So, in 2018, Council authorized the City of Toronto and TTC to approve key terms of a new consolidated ground lease for Canada Square. And in 2019, the ground lease and other agreements were executed with the Canada Square Consortium ownership based upon those terms. In December 2020, as Councillor Matlow mentioned, Oxford Properties is a representative for this consortium, which is Oxford and Canadian Tire, submitting a zoning bylaw amendment application for redevelopment of the lands. So the community meeting was essentially put on hold for the development application, and council directed us to form a Midtown working group with local stakeholders across 3 wards and develop guiding principles for the site in the immediate area, and to provide further information regarding the existing plan work and the ground lease agreements. And so we did that on May 5th, 12th, 19th, and then June 2nd and 7th this year. The Midtown Working Group, we met with the support of a facilitator, and they drafted a vision for the area with 6 priorities. City Council supported the vision to the extent it's consistent with the existing emerging policies, and requested city planning to provide a feasibility review of the vision in consultation with the working group and the other relevant city divisions. And that report is to go to October 18th, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Housing Committee. So the report explains looks at the feasibility of the priorities and explains how they can, a little bit of discussion about how they can be implemented. Council also directed city planning to hold a community consultation on the working group's vision. So that's what we're doing tonight. And city planning is working to bring a final report on the development application to July 1st, prior to July 1st, 2022, which is the municipal approval condition date in the consolidated lease agreement. So the policy context for the area, I'm going to try and keep this as short as I can. Essentially, there's broad high-level policies that's set by the government. The city sort of focuses those policies in our documents, and then we use things like tall building design guidelines and zoning bylaws to implement individual developments and review them. So the provincial policy, they're required, planning decisions are required to conform to the growth plan, which anticipates compact, vibrant, complete communities. It identifies areas for growth and establishes minimum growth targets, so not maximums, but minimums. Supports the use of existing and new infrastructure to support efficient growth in built-up areas like the City of Toronto, and promote a strong and competitive economy, and conserve valuable natural resources of land, air, and water for current and future generations. So you can see here these centers, and these are what Councillor Matlow had mentioned earlier. These are the growth centers that are identified in the provincial policy. You can see in the middle of the screen there's Young Eglinton, in addition to downtown North York, and so on. And so this site, Canada Square site, is in the growth areas established by the province. So the policy layer down, we have the official plan, which includes an overall vision for how the city will grow. And this site is in an area within our official plan that is in the Young Eglinton secondary plan area. It is also in a center defined in the plan, which is a direction from the provincial governments for us to delineate those centers. And so it's there, it's within that. These are areas that are designated for growth, and they're to integrate and coordinate transportation and land use planning to attract more jobs and people. The Young Eglinton area should continue to develop as both an office center and a desirable living area. Appropriate transition in scale and intensity from within the center to be established to surrounding neighborhoods, and establish a high quality public realm featuring squares, public squares, parks, and public art. And through the development process, improvements will be made to the quality of pedestrian realm, and new parks and open spaces will be created. It also says that this official plan also says that we assess the adequacy of existing community services, facilities, and local institutions, and establish a strategy for the timely provision of service and facility enhancements and new facilities to meet the needs of a growing population. So drilling down a little further in our land use designations. This is a mixed use area. You can see the red areas are mixed use areas. They're areas that are designated for growth, for employment, for residential growth. Those are the part of the areas where the city is purposefully directing growth. There's some additional growth happening in the sort of lighter red or orange areas, and then the yellow areas are the stable neighborhoods, and there's not a lot of growth that the official plan directs to those areas, but some sort of evolution that can happen between buildings 1 and 4 stories, depending on what the character is and so on. But in the for the most part, those are not areas that are designated for growth. I think we've gone over most of this. I can say that the existing policies in the official plan require 100% replacement of any office, a gross floor area located on the site if it's to be demolished for new development. I think I'm going to skip this. I think we know, for the most part, based on what I said, what the vision for the city it has in place in the official plan for this area. One thing that the secondary plan does, and this was a change made by the provincial government when they approved the secondary plan, is identifies heights at the Young Eglinton Crossroads, which is this area the Canada Square site is on, for 35 to 65 story, with the peak at the crossroads and the gradual transition down in building heights in all directions. There's also a zoning bylaw that was approved by City Council in 2009, and that was a result of a study with the community. It allows for 7 times density of the lot area, with 5.5 times for residential uses and a maximum of 5.5 times for commercial uses. 7 times density essentially means if the area was covered once with a building, that would be 1 times density. With 2 floors of that building, it would be 2 times density. And when you start moving those around and creating different shapes, you sort of will max out at around 7 times when you're doing a number of different, you can get sort of taller buildings when you have more open spaces, roads, things like that. It allowed for a height of 120 meters at Yonge and Eglinton, 85 meters of the southern portion of the site, and created provisions for transition to the surrounding neighborhood. It also required a road along Duplex, connecting Duplex to Berwick, and a park along Duplex Avenue. And this is sort of what that looks like. This was a rendering of what could happen under that zoning bylaw, and so that was meant to implement something like this. So this is what the applicant for the current application is proposing to amend. So I'd like to pass the presentation now over to David Tickle as a representative for the Midtown Working Group to present a number of slides on their vision and what had come out of their process.
Thank you very much, Alex. And I'd like to thank Councillors Matlow, Robinson, and Cole for your wonderful introductions and your ongoing support, not just as council members, but also as members of the Midtown Working Group. You are active members and participants, and you'll see you're listed as such on the slide I'm going to present. And I'd also like to thank planning for their support throughout this process and for the ongoing work that they're doing, as well as all of my colleagues in the working group and in the community. So I'm going to, this presentation has several parts. Okay, so first of all, just to build on the timeline that Alex presented, a couple of pieces that I just want to point out here that sort of build up to where we are today. There was a piece of legislation that required a comprehensive review of the site, a complete site review that was passed in 2018 at the precise same time that the negotiation of the New Deal with Oxford and Canadian Tire was happening, that there was a requirement for a comprehensive view. There's mixed views on whether that review actually took place or not. But if it was, I don't think anybody in the community was aware that they actually participated in such a review. So that's one aspect of the context. Then, as Alex pointed out, the TTC and on behalf of the city signed a lease which is 99 years, renewable for another 99 years. And that's essentially an extension of the existing leases that he referenced. The Oxford application came just around Christmas time, as Josh mentioned, and just some basic data points for people to know about. The projected investment, according to some media that appear to have interviewed Oxford people, is they're planning on investing about $2.5 billion on this. The total gross floor area, according to the application, is just about 3 million square feet, of which 78% is intended to be residential. There's no residential on that site right now. Let's be clear about that. All of that is going to be absolutely new residential. 21% office, which is the volume of offices, as Alex pointed out, is what I would say significantly less than what's there now. A little bit of retail, and 0.3, less than almost just about 1/3 of 1% dedicated to the community in the form of 10,000 square feet, which is sort of like if you have, I don't know, a 25 by 50-foot lot, it's maybe you can do the math on that. It's not a big piece of land, a big piece of floor space devoted to community in terms of allocation. Building heights greatly exceed city rules and standards, and that's supposed to be a compensation for the fact that they're creating privately owned park space instead of that. The city gets some substantial benefits from this. New bus barns and subway entrances that the developer is going to subsidize, then that's worth, the city believes it's worth between $30 and $50 million. So that's a big benefit, but it's actually going to transit infrastructure that's of citywide importance, not relevant directly to the community. And certainly if every subway station and LRT station was being subsidized in that way by the community, we'd be in a very different place. Also expected a 99-year income that's supposed to have a net present value of about 162 million, as I'd say, 10,000 square feet. So the city planning began its review, which Alex mentioned. The situation there is that, if you go by the rules that Alex reflected, the Oxford application is nearly compliant with current zoning bylaws, so it's a pretty good candidate for approval. But the application is not compliant with the broader policies affecting the site. And I'm going to keep, this is sort of, as somebody said, we're at a crossroads. I don't know if people are reading the new book called Crossroads, new bestseller actually by Franzen, Jonathan Franzen. Anyhow, and that goes back to Robert Johnson and the deal with the devil. So a very interesting metaphor, relevant to what we're dealing with here, actually. But in any case, there are two kinds of kind of rules that apply to this site. One is the zoning bylaws and the desire to maximize residential growth, and the other are the rules and bylaws that and policies, both provincially and municipally, that call for complete communities. And they're really in conflict right on this site. And this is the crossroads of that particular battle for our entire community, in some ways for the entire city. Next slide, please. So we're in the community, these various community organizations that you're going to see in a minute. We're being consulted in various ways, starting in 2009, then there was another bout of consultation in 2017, then more discussions with the developer in late 2020, and this is what they put on the table. And as we looked at this and we thought about it, we suddenly realized, it's not just about, whether we want a tower of X height or X other height. There's something much more fundamental that we need to think about. So next slide, please. So we started getting together and we formed a coalition of resident associations that cover, boy, all the way, I'm not sure how far it goes, but it's all the way over to way into Leaside, south, north, east, and west of here, and then the Federation of North Toronto Residents Associations has about 30 or 40 resident associations that are in all parts of the city. And we started having meetings, and go next slide, please. We began to realize that, what are we facing here? We're kind of a community in crisis, as somebody said to us. Tower residential growth is out of control. We have zero to limited community services and facilities, schools, childcare, parkland, living arts, community recreation. Where is that for a community that's going to eventually be 100,000 people? Not enough jobs. It's going to be it's a crossroads now for two major transit lines plus tons of buses. Yet there's hardly any jobs here, and certainly very few innovative jobs and jobs of the future. And basically, if it goes the way it's been proposed, then it's really going to steal it as a transfer point rather than a destination for employment. And certainly not for desirable and innovative jobs. I mean, a lot of the jobs here now are really not, the kinds of jobs that generate innovation and growth. Plus, we, of course, have the things that Councillor Robinson was talking about, construction, pollution, harming our health, and extending the climate crisis. So what we started asking ourselves is if and when our city leaders are going to address this, or are they simply going to let Midtown become a slowly declining bedroom community? Next slide, please. So what sort of the three key messages that we came to ourselves. Midtown doesn't need anything close to another 2,700 more residences. We've got lots coming and lots here. Canada Square, a publicly owned site, should meet the needs of the public. And this is really the city's last best chance to build a Midtown that works for the people that live here and well beyond. Next slide, please. So we decided we needed a vision for Canada Square that meets the needs of everyone, all different demographics, age groups, needs, and so on, family status. Make it a genuine destination for the whole city for all these things, enhance our safety, health, and enjoyment and property values, you know, and all these other things that, you know, are really fundamental values to a complete, healthy, vibrant community. Next slide, please. So we started to kind of, on our own, really, begin to craft what could be an alternate, a fundamentally different way to think about what Canada Square could be. And we started working all this through time. We were working very closely with our councillors. We were speaking to planning, city planning along the way, and so on. And so through all this and the support that we got from them, we began to coalesce around, okay, what are we going to do about it? So next slide, please. So essentially what happened is through the leadership of Councillor Matlow, Councillor Cole, and Councillor Robinson, a motion was passed in City Council in April mandating the formation of what now became the Midtown Working Group, and with a mandate to develop a vision, a different vision for Canada Square that was not dependent on any kind of initial rules that are set by the current application. What could it be if we just imagine what we really need for this community and this city? So, as you can see here, it was expanded. The actual sort of non-governmental members in the first part of this list, we added some other people. Henry Byers, for example, from the Midtown BIA. We had someone from where was it? Something else. We had a couple of other organizations. Plus, we had two representatives from the Toronto District School Board, Rachel Chernos-Lynn and Shelley Laskin, and the councillors themselves. They were all members, active members, idea-producing members of the committee. And at the end of the day, we all supported what you're about to hear about unanimously, and that went back to the City Council. So if we can move on, I'm going to take you now through some of the content of this. So essentially, I'm going to just basically take you through the report. And we had a really excellent facilitator. So this is based, a lot of it is based on his words or adaptations of his words. So first, we identified the context of the policy, the crossroads of two key arteries, two key transit lines. Now, here's the thing. Here's sort of where we are. Based on current official plan and current development applications, we're going to have at least, well over 123,000 residents by 2050, which far, far, far exceed any possible targets, growth targets that were ever imagined when those growth targets were set for this part of the city, probably by several multiples. As Alex said, we're one of 5 provincially designated urban growth areas, which means in addition to density, we require focused investments in regional public service facilities, as well as commercial, recreation, entertainment facilities, and high density major employment. These are words taken out of planning policies. The city's own provincially approved official plan amendment governing this neighborhood requires the Young Eglinton Centre, which is where the Canada Square is at the heart of, be a major center of economic activity with a concentration of existing and new office uses and other value-added employment, civic and cultural hub, community services, facilities and entertainment, retail and services unit that meet the day-to-day needs of residents and workers, not only in Midtown, but also from across the city. So that was the policy content that we were working with, because we don't think we need to really be contributing every single square meter of Midtown to density development. So move to the next slide, please. So here we go. This is the vision. And we just got 6 pieces. I'm going to slow down a little bit here. So the first vision, and this is all verbatim from the report, which you may already have. You can easily download it. Canada Square should be a new town center for Midtown Toronto and contain a vibrant mix of uses: a public square, a park and open spaces. Yes, residential, but more modest than what is proposed. Learning of all kinds, employment, community facilities, cultural and performing arts spaces. So that's the vision in a nutshell. Second priority, what we're recommending is that instead of the massive amount of residential use that's currently in the application, whatever I said it was, 60 or 70%, residential uses should be limited to just 20% of the overall developed floor area. And of that, affordable housing should comprise at least 25% of the housing mix. So we're not recommending, just to be clear, if they go to the full development that they're currently proposing, we don't think it's realistic. We haven't really discussed this, to be honest, but it's probably not realistic that 25% of that be affordable housing. But what we're saying is a much more modest volume of residential use, and of that, 25% should be affordable. But we are definitely advocates of affordable housing in Midtown, possibly co-op housing as a way to do it. We also believe that Midtown needs a new school to serve students from junior kindergarten to grade 8. And now there are discussions going on not only with the TDSB, but also with the Catholic School Board about this. Next slide, please. We need a large public park. Right now, there is an allocation in the current application for a very small public park, and all the rest of it is privately owned public spaces. And as someone who actually resides in a large condo with privately owned public spaces, I can tell you that the dynamics of what they call a POPs is very different from a genuine publicly owned park. There's a lot less. The city really doesn't control what happens on it. We don't really do a lot with it. It's basically a place where people can come and sit and walk through or so on. But the city and the public don't really have the ability to program what happens in our POPs. Fifth priority, and this is very, very important, Canada Square should be a center for inspiring learning and jobs. And by that, we mean all of these things. Advanced education. So yes, we want kindergarten to grade 7 or grade 8, but we also want a post-secondary institution. And we've done some work to bring a post-secondary institution to the table. We, the community, have done this. We believe there should be a genuine focus on innovative jobs and innovation in both the kinds of employers that are attracted to the sites, but also to the other kinds of things that we'll do here, which I'll get to in a minute. It should really be a magnet. We shouldn't see itself just as serving the community. We've got the massive transit coming here from all directions. It should be a magnet for learners and workers, not only here, but from across Toronto. Indeed, it should be of world-class significance. So that second part is that we think we should actually have a business incubator here, and it should be themed, as I'll say in a minute, to, usually when you have business incubators and and employers and so on who are focused, they focus on something. Actually, Oxford, for example, is doing a lot of investment globally right now in biotech and life sciences innovation. And it's a big, big business theme for it, which they've discussed explicitly. What we think, we don't need to put biotech at Yonge and Eglinton. There's a huge amount of biotech innovation in downtown Toronto, thanks to Mars and all the hospitals down there, and U of T and so on. But there is a need for green urban innovation. So that should be the theme up here, as you see on the next bullet here. So going on to the next slide, and the last one in this series, community and cultural spaces are vital. And we need lots of we don't just need one little childcare opportunity thing here. We probably need several. One is probably may not even be enough to serve the people who live in that community, but we need others because a viable childcare, as a grandfather, I'll tell you, it's got to be within 500 meters walking distance from the home. And we have a real dearth of those right at the center of Midtown. We place for community and teen programs and genuine culture and performing arts with residents performing groups, resident artists, not people who are that's the only way it can possibly succeed. So we're not just looking for a space, we're looking for creating a vibrant cultural environment, an artistic and creative environment right at the heart of Midtown, again, which will be of citywide significance. Next slide, please. So we put all this together in that report and cover page I showed you. And then a motion came to council, which I believe was presented by Councillor Matlow and had the support of our other two councillors here. And well, we didn't really know how it was going to go. Was this thing going to pass, or were we going to get any votes for it at all, other than it was hardcore? It ended up passing unanimously. I'm only going to read to you selectively from it. These are important points. First is City Council support the vision for a new town center as attached, as described in that report, in the Midtown Working Group report. In other words, City Council has expressed unanimous support for this vision. Yes, to the extent that it's existing and emerging policy, but as you can see, there's a bit of debate about which policy is most important, which class of policy is most important for the site. Secondly, it called on planning, the chief planner and his team and other divisions to report back with a feasibility review of this vision. And note there are two parts to this feasibility review. One is to assess the inclusion of all of these elements that we talked about, and secondly, to come up with an implementation plan for all of the above. So it wasn't saying, can we do it or can't we do it? It was saying, give us a plan for how we can do it, including identifying other financial options and arrangements, including not just different arrangements with the developer, other funding from the city, but also potentially even support from other levels of government, and going beyond that to other levels of support, perhaps in the private sector. Who knows what was intended there, but you can imagine. So this was a pretty clear direction that the kind of results we're looking for from this process that we're now in the middle of will actually say not whether this should be done or whether it could be done, but really how it can be done, how to make it happen. Next slide, please. So that's the end of my slides.
Okay, thanks, David, and
Alex.
thanks, appreciate that. So I have 4 slides, and I promise I'll go through them quickly. And I just wanted to speak a little bit to the feasibility review and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities with that. So we conducted the feasibility review, and we reported on it to Planning and Housing Committee. So that report is now available. We found that most of the working group's vision is feasible within the existing policy framework. And in the context of a development application, some of the challenges we found were competing priorities. So for example, a school needing exclusive use of a parkland during the school hours may limit park size, at least for part of the day, reducing the amount of housing in the way that we calculate parkland dedication contribution will result in a reduction of parkland contribution from a development. Funding for schools is outside the city's authority. It's provincial funded and approved. So that's another challenge, although we have been engaging with the school board. So it's not an insurmountable challenge, but it is something that we are working on. Some of the vision conflicts with existing policies. Remember, part of it looked at to the extent it's consistent with existing and emerging policies. So, for example, limiting 20% of the uses on the site, limiting housing to 20% of the uses on the site is not really consistent with the provincial policy, official plan or zoning bylaw. Policy which looks at concentrating or creating housing options on transit lines and in centers, and as well as the existing permissions in the zoning bylaw for 5.5 times coverage. One of the other challenges we found is just the limitations of policy to change market demand for things like office uses, performing arts spaces. So that's not to say those things can't go on the site, but you need to generate the users. So simply mandating them doesn't always mean that you will have people to take them. Again, it's a challenge. It's not necessarily something that is insurmountable. Existing leases on the site mean the site is under control of Oxford until 2051 and portions till 2071. The potential costs related to the loss of rental payments, loss of contribution towards the subway, infrastructure improvements, and the buyout costs to the tenant. We estimated to be somewhere around $400 million, and admittedly, some of that would have to be a negotiation between the city and Oxford. You need agreement from Oxford to go forward with something like that and city council approval. And then there's subway infrastructure below the site, and that influences how the site can be laid out and above ground uses. Some of the opportunities we saw for implementation was through the site-specific zoning bylaw. You can regulate the mix of land uses and establish limits. The bylaw can permit uses like schools and post-secondary institutions. It can also control the location of buildings and open spaces. Section 37 of the Planning Act, we can secure with the agreement of the applicant or an applicant the provision of community benefits, including provisions for an on-site childcare and other community service facilities. Parkland dedication will enable the city to secure open spaces on the site as city-owned parkland. Parkland acquisition can be considered for additional parkland, so other parts of the site. Through our powers of site plan control, we can secure the design of buildings and open space and help achieve sustainable and resilient themes in the 6 priorities. There's a tool of official plan amendment, which can be considered if a new public road, which I mentioned was earlier planned. It's also in the official plan. If it's no longer pursued to connect Berwick Avenue and Duplex Avenue, that space may be able to be redesignated as part of the official plan and used to achieve a larger park. There's shared use agreements, so that can be used to establish shared uses between a potential future school, parkland, and potentially the gymnasium of the school for residents in the area. We know there are those type of agreements throughout the city. There are economic development incentive programs to attract businesses and to support innovation hubs, so the use of those. The city has open door affordable rental housing program to provide financial incentives to support greater affordable housing outcomes, such as more affordable housing units and lower rents. And then, of course, there's always capital investment by the city in community services and facilities to keep up with the demand. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I am finished presenting for the evening.
So Alex, thank you very much for presenting the the main aspects of your report. And I want to acknowledge that you have added into one of the slides your endorsement for considering parks acquisition funds to contribute to the park space that we have as part of our vision, because it wasn't in the initial report. And I just wanted to comment on that briefly. Um, it's my opinion. I believe it's many members of the working group agree that the less reliancy that we have to achieve our working group's vision on the development itself, and the more that we can look at what our existing tools, such as parkland acquisition funds, to achieve those goals, the better. So in other words, we don't have to do a trade-off about how big or how much of the development versus what kind of park we want and how big and special it really should be. So that's something that we are going to work on together with the working group leaders and Alex and his team in the days forward. But tonight is about what you, as our fellow Midtown neighbors, what you think of this, and we want to hear from you. This is the vision that many of us have come together and we've put forward, but we want to hear from you. Like, do you like everything there? Is there something missing? Is there something that you'd like us to consider adding? What do you want for Canada Square? And we look forward to hearing your feedback, and everybody here is here to answer any questions you might have as well. So, Alex, if you could start just identifying people, raising questions, and actually, Alex, a lot of people may not know, or Robert, whoever can explain this, how you interact on a WebEx format. So, in other words, how will people be able to indicate they have a comment or a question if they do, whether they be on the phone or on WebEx? Could one of you please just go through that for everyone?
I'll
Hi,
let you
yes,
know. Go
Councillor.
ahead, Robert.
Yeah, so there is both a chat feature, a Q&A feature, and also a raise hand function. So if you'd like to speak verbally, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you at the correct time. And I believe there are a couple of hands raised at the moment. So Alex, if you wanted to start with those, or we can start with the chat questions.
Why don't we start with some of the people who've got their hands raised? Robert, I know people are probably dying to ask their questions at this point.
Sure. I have Jacob D. Jacob, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on. Welcome.
Hi. So, as a Torontonian under 30 and probably one of the few in attendance here, since these meetings tend to be not always representative, I'm a bit concerned by the assertion that we need to build way less housing. You know, we're in a housing crisis. so many of my friends and coworkers, they've been totally priced out of the entire city, going to, spreading around the entire region. These are people's children who are not able to live near their parents, people's grandkids who are not able to see their grandparents, not able to walk down the street. So that's a very concerning thing. But my question is more on one of the assertions in the slides from the working group, which said that one of the objectives for the Canada Place development should be to protect or increase property values. And this is concerning for me because, as I said, many of my friends have been completely priced out of the market. So my questions for the councillors are, do you agree with this assertion that one of the goals for the development should be to increase property values? Yes or no?
I'm sorry, would you cite where does it say it's about increasing property values?
That was on one of the slides for the working group that Mr. Tickle presented. It
David,
said
could you
that
speak to that?
that one of the objectives should be to protect, or I'm not sure whether it was protect or increase property values, but I'm wondering whether the councillors agree with that.
Okay, well, I'll come back to that in just a moment. David Tickle, could you just speak to that one item in the slide?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. In the short term, we don't want to see any further explosion of property values. That's for sure. The property values are going crazy right now, and everybody's being priced out of the market. Everybody who wants to enter the market, who is not in the market, is being priced out. But there's a serious risk that if you look out maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years, and we don't get the kind of complete community amenities and capabilities that we're advocating for Midtown, that it will become just a bedroom community, and it will ultimately go into decline. And we see this in many neighborhoods already, where neighborhoods that are high dense towers that have very little else, that don't have jobs, that don't have the vibrant community services and so on, all the life that happens somewhere else. Over time, these communities go into decline. That's we have signs of it right in our own neighborhood. If you go to some streets, that happened for a period of time with some of the streets in our neighborhood. So that's really the point we were trying to make.
I'll just I'll add, and obviously I'd invite Mike or Jay to opine as well. That you know the the question. I know, I go to a lot of meetings, and there, Jacob, there are people who are like-minded with you who just, might suggest, let's build as much housing as possible, and just the bigger the better, the more the merrier, and it's as simple as that. And that's a suggestion that in some way it's simply a supply and demand antidote to the affordability crisis that we're having. The reality is that has been tested. Like over the past 20, 30 years, there's been more supply built in Toronto than most any other city I know of. And but the prices keep going up because the challenge is that we've had more and more really expensive condos built, and rental often that are at luxury prices, but not enough of a stock of affordable housing that people can access, that allows people to remain in Midtown and downtown Toronto and elsewhere. So what this proposal does is it actually requests, and I don't know if we'll be able to meet this goal, but the aspiration is correct. We're not asking for even what is suggested in the new inclusionary zoning rules, which will be, I believe, 10% affordable units in any development in proximity to a transit node. We're asking for 25% of any residential housing being affordable. So I've actually never seen a proposal that asks for more affordable housing than this one. And that's a real, I mean, that reflects the character of this community, that this community is saying we want this community to be affordable to people who want to remain in Midtown and move to Midtown. But what we believe in, I believe collectively as a community, and I believe this reflects our values, is that everyone who either lives here today or who we will welcome into the community tomorrow should have a great quality of life, should have parks, should have access to local schools, should have affordable childcare. And we don't have enough of that for this community, and that's what this proposal fights for and has as its vision. Mike, did you want to add anything? And Jay?
Yeah, it's Mike Cole here. Yeah, no, this is a real misconception that people have, is that if you build more condos that cost now in the new condos in Young Degnan cost $700,000-800,000 to start into the millions, you're going to solve the housing crisis. You're not going to solve any housing crisis by building expensive condos and high-end rentals that cost $5,000 a month to rent for one bedroom. That's all that's being built here. And we have superseded our targets, our growth targets years ago. So what we are saying is you can't just build housing all in one area of Toronto. You know, between us three councillors, we must have maybe 200 development applications. You can't have it all in Midtown because, as Josh said, you need libraries, you need community centers, you need health centers, you need proper schools. Park open space is disappearing. So and that's what David Tickle is saying, if you move everybody into these towers that are expensive and 90% of their income goes to pay for rent or whatever, it's not a good place to live. So you have to have the investment in community infrastructure, and there's a dearth of community infrastructure that's available to the people who are here now, never mind the 60,000 that are coming. So we're saying, yeah, build more housing, but as Josh said, you got to build affordable housing. Nothing that we see coming down the pike here in Midtown is affordable.
Okay.
It's high-end housing.
So Jay, sorry, David, you spoke before. I just want to make sure that Jay.
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I think it's all been said, but I think it's really about complete communities and securing amenities. And we've all talked about that in our opening remarks. We want the whole package and we want to get this right. And so I think it's very important to ensure all aspects are looked after, and you know, whether it's schools, libraries, community centers, green space, on and on and on, there is not enough of it. And we're all three local councillors are saying the same thing because we are experiencing it on a weekly basis, feedback from our residents saying the same. And so yeah, I would just concur with what's been said and add those comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, so back to you, Alex, for the next question.
Okay, thanks, councillors. And maybe I'll just move to one or two comments, questions from the chat, and then Robert can answer someone who's got their hand up. Juanita says that noise is a huge issue at Yonge and Eglinton, and today I couldn't speak on the phone because of excessive noise. Will noise be included with desk schools, etc. as issues? I think, you know, I think that's something that's dealt with through construction management plans, and I know the school has obviously, if kids are going to be outside, they can generate some noise, but it depends on exactly where everybody is, and those are also very limited time frames. Dust is typically dealt with during construction through construction management plan, so it is something we deal with through our site plan process. And Tanya asks, you know, what can we do as citizens to help you as planners and city councilors achieve the goal of making this a great public space? From my perspective, as someone who's reviewing a development application, I think part of that is participate in that process and provide your feedback to city planning. I don't know, Andrew, if you want to speak a little bit to your process, and then if the councilors would like to opine on that as well.
Andrew?
I definitely can. So for the parkland piece, as the councillor mentioned, we'll be looking into if there is the ability to purchase lands out of this lease to be a larger park. But what you can do to support our push for a larger park is just to continuously do what you're doing. Show up to public meetings and express your support for a large park. What we're pushing for at this site is considerably larger than what Oxford is currently showing. I think Oxford is showing about 1,800 square meters of parkland, and we're pushing for 4,000. So it's a large difference, and it's much needed considering the neighborhood and considering the number of residents that are currently being proposed. So those are what you can, like, those are ideas that you can do to support us in our push for parkland. But once we have the park secured, then there'll be further public meetings to decide the design of the park. And we'll need your input for that as well, so that the park is designed in a way that the community can use it and it doesn't just sit as open space with the amenities that the public's looking for being somewhere else. So we would be sending out notifications to the neighborhood to let you know when those meetings are happening, and please join them so that you have a say. And we will be securing parkland, but right now we just don't know what size that will be.
From the advocacy perspective, Mike, Jay, and I are working as a team, and we are working closely with our working group and speaking with residents in our respective wards, which share the same Midtown community. And you know, I will venture to speak for all three of us to say that when there are decision-making points, we will advertise those and we will share them, whether it be through our newsletters, social media, etc. And if we come to a juncture where we believe that it will be contentious at council, we may ask you to write in letters or emails rather, and make your voice heard. But we are going to continue advocating towards the vision that we've shared with you tonight, along with incorporating ideas from you as we move forward.
Josh, if I could add,
Yeah.
the thing, park space is so critically important for the health of not only the Canada Square development, but you've got to, you know, people have to understand on the north side of Eglinton, facing Canada Square, I've got 4 towers going up to 65 stories with no park space at all. Little slivers, you know, like at, you know, Eglinton Duplex. They want to put 65 stories on a postage-sized stamped lot there. So that's why the park space in Canada Square is of critical importance to the whole Midtown with all these other developments that are being appealed and approved at the Ontario Land Tribunal. So that's why we have to have these public spaces. And if we can get whatever we can get here at Canada Square, it benefits the whole community.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Also add, it was the residents who identified the lack of park space, and I spoke about this at council. So I'm really happy to hear staff are pushing actively for this, but I think a lot of us would love to see it almost be a destination. So you can't get to green grass at Northeast Quadrant, or very limited. So you can head to this destination. You know, obviously we can't pull off a Central Park. We don't have that ability. That would be a dream. But if there's green space and open space there, people can head over there just to hang out or read a book or meet up with some friends, and you know, connect with Mother Earth a bit. So that's not exactly your question, but I would just stay tuned as the process unfolds. Exactly. And keep pushing for what you believe the vision should be.
Thanks, councillors. And Tanya concluded with for everything that's here, her priority would be for a shared park space for all of the local residents. So maybe we'll turn it back over to Robert to pick someone who's got their hand up who can ask a question.
Sure, thanks, Alex. I have Saeed Hashemi, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name. Go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, you're on, Saeed.
Good afternoon. So thanks for the time and thanks for the presentation. I'd just like to echo some of the comments raised a bit earlier on asking for more housing in this project. Um, Again, I'm not convinced by any of these comments, and you know, like if you want to look at it from the economic standpoint, it actually is proven that more housing, even luxury housing, reduces house prices. And if anyone wants to reduces rents, and if anyone wants to talk about this, we can take it offline. And I can give you a list of studies on this. I mean, it just sounds ridiculous when people say this, that luxury housing does not bring down rent prices. The effect is called filtering, and when you prevent market rate housing, what you do is rich people will come in and price out poorer people, and that's what's going on in Toronto. It's the rental apartments that used to be for lower end percentiles of the income scale are going for, you know, only the richest, and a lot of people are just being priced out and leaving. So I find it smug and complacent to look at people who are comfortably housed come here and tell us that the priority is to raise our property values, and young people should not have homes to be built for them. And then, you know, it's gaslighting us into saying only affordable housing will bring down rents. That is intellectually dishonest. And you know, I have a lot more to say on this if anyone wants to take it offline, but uh, that's all. So I'd like to ask for more housing, more market rate housing, more affordable housing, more all kinds of housing. And I don't, I will not accept, you know, this false premise that only subsidized housing that is limited by our budget, you know, and how much we can afford by the government, um, will reduce rents. That's not true. I can give you a list of citations on this later if you want. Thanks.
Thank you, Saeed. Back to you, Alex.
Robert, is there anyone else with their hand up?
Yep, I have a few more. Ann King is next. Go ahead, Ann.
Thank you very much. I was a member of the working group representing the Stanley Knowles Housing Cooperative, which, to our recent speaker, is an affordable housing co-op in the Young Eglinton neighborhood, and it certainly makes living here affordable for me and my neighbors, most of whom are senior citizens. I heartily endorse, and our co-op heartily endorses the priorities of the working group. And I think planning has done a very good job at pointing out the challenges posed by some of the priorities and the benefits also proposed by priorities and how they might be implemented. My concern, and this question is for the councillors, we are encumbered by 2 existing leases with a developer. And planning pointed out the cost of removing them from the equation as being just about prohibitive. How we got to be encumbered before meaningful consultation with the community took place and without a mandated special area review is a question for another day, but that's where we are. So my question for the councillors are, what are we going to do if Oxford or any developer is unwilling to comply with a mandated vision, which hopefully would be mandated by council and by the community? What options do we have to, I mean, we can hope that they'll cooperate and see the best interest in everyone's case is to work together, but if they don't, what do we do? What are our options? That's it.
So the you know, let alone the new lease, which again is conditional upon approval. The existing lease, you know, this was before any of our times, is, you know, was purchased by Oxford by the previous owner of that agreement, and that's in, you know, that's active for several decades from now. So in other words, it is a reality that none of us, you know, asked for, but it's a reality that we have to face. So Oxford is a player in this, and we can't pretend that they're not. And it wouldn't be honest to suggest that they're not. But just because they hold those rights doesn't mean that they should just, necessarily get entirely their own way. And what we've been doing through this process, Anne, along with, and I want to just remind you, like, I think that the first thing that was really important is to have been able to get the agreement from CREATO as part of the conditional lease, to make sure that they could not run to the appeals body, because if they did that, they could have already done that, frankly. So we needed to keep everybody at the table so that we could keep working in the same spirit as we have been. And ultimately, with all those questions that are outstanding, such as what will their next steps be? What will the future of the Canadian Tire headquarters be? There's a number of things that we need to consider as we go along this path. What timing will planning take, as far as next year when they want to, when they intend to bring their final report forward? All these things are real. But in the interim, what we're doing is we're putting together a vision that is one that is organically of us, of Midtown Toronto, of local residents. And we're going to have to find a way to get as much out of our vision as we possibly can. Are we going to get every single thing? Probably not. Can we get so much more than we would have otherwise? Yeah, I believe we can. And hopefully Oxford will work as a partner with us to achieve that goal. And I think that we need to sort of work in the spirit of that relationship until they prove otherwise, because they're at the table. So, Oxford, I'll close with this. Oxford said when they were doing their initial round of consultation, before they submitted their application, that we were happy with. I remember, David, I remember your slideshow where you showed all these wonderful, promises and ideas that they, floating. It was like they were going to do these farmers markets and all these really cool things. So let's work with them in that spirit. Let's achieve that. And they have an opportunity to do something that will leave an amazing legacy. And if they choose not to, then we'll choose to take a different tactic and a different relationship. But I think that so far, let's continue working in the way that we are. And frankly, I think we've made an enormous amount of progress. So that is a pragmatic approach that we're taking.
Yeah, it's Councillor Cole. If I could follow up on Josh's comments. I think we're in a unique situation that we've already built the foundation in that we've made this very definitive statement here. We've drawn the line in the sand that this is a critically important development for the whole city of Toronto. So Oxford's got that message. And, they're a pretty astute organization, funded by the Ulmer's pension fund. So they're very publicly sensitive. And so we've already made that statement. And I think with the fact that they cannot go to the Ontario Land Tribunal gives us a huge, sort of lever here that we normally wouldn't have. We would be dreaming in Technicolor if we were dealing with someone that was going to run to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And so therefore, I think we're in good position. We just have to keep working with this through CREATO, our city partners, and through this planning process, and work with Oxford in good faith that that we want to do something that's outstanding. And then the final thing I'll say about this is that where else in the city of Toronto would you get a community that's being flooded by development above and beyond? I mean, I think we got more development in Yonge than they have in 8 of the 10 provinces. But anyways, we've already got all this development. We're saying we're not worried about the height. We're not worried about the density. Our issues are beyond that. I mean, that's a remarkable statement the community has made that is quite unusual, to say the least, when people in some parts of my ward are complaining about 6 stories. So just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Mike. A really good point. Jay, did you want to add anything?
Was well covered, and I think it's more important to hear from the residents.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, so back to you, Alex and Robert.
Thanks. I'll just do a couple of the questions or comments in the Q of A, and then we'll go back to those who've had their hand raised. The first question from Elizabeth is asking, how do we manage getting new school facilities? Is it really a provincial issue? What can we do here? I will take a stab at that. So we have been engaged with both the public and Catholic school boards. They've both identified a need for an elementary school from JK to grade 8 on the site. There are some issues that need to be worked through in terms of design. So I guess the first thing to think about is um, there is phase 1 of the development that's happening, and that would be the first one in the application anyway. That would be the first portion that would go. And both school boards have acknowledged that they can't fit a school there, and so what they're looking to do is find a spot on the second phase of for a school. Both staff from the school boards are involved, from both school boards, as well as school trustees have been involved in this discussion. And so what they have to do is, at this point, work with Oxford to try and see how they could fit a new school in terms of a different kind of urban format into the site and how that would work. And then they also have to work with the province to secure funding on that and to secure a time frame for delivery of that funding. So there's a few challenges that need to be dealt with before they can confirm whether or not they can actually do it. But there are a number of people from both the trustees and the school boards working on it. And Oxford is engaged with them as well, as is the city. I have another question asking about why do we want the business part and what's wrong with the bedroom community. Again, I think one of the things about Yonge and Eglinton is, it is a destination that people want to come to, but it also is a place where people work now. People working in the community means that they don't have to get on the subway every day to go downtown. It's good for the businesses in town. It's good for the retail business. It's good for the foot traffic for those businesses. Um, and it helps maintain the vitality of the community. So from a planning perspective, on all different policy levels, we always try to make sure that the business part of development is something that we support. And that also works towards mixed use neighborhoods, right? And so this is a mixed use neighborhood, and creating those sort of uses are something that allow people to live and work in the same place. And again, that's important for a number of different reasons. Um, Robert, did you want to see if anyone else had their hand up here for a
Yes, we
question?
have a few. I'm going to start with Sushil Taylor. Sushil, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're on.
Okay, so I want to kind of add to kind of a question of affordability. Um, I want to talk about how like just kind of a little bit of preamble, not too much, but I'll have my question. But about 30%, like communities where people spend more than 32% of their income on rent can expect a more rapid increase in homelessness. And like we've learned that the focus of this development is to um, obviously make a more complete community, but that also means that there is going to be less housing, right? And there is going to be a park. My question is this. Would you make sure that this park, and we got to, face the realities here, right? There's going to be increased homelessness in general if we continue this. So would you ensure that at this park you would oppose the eviction of any potential homeless encampments? That's my question. Yes or no?
So I'm not sure who that was directed at, but it's not something I
Towards city
guess
council,
as a planner that I would
towards
be
the
able
three
to answer.
councilors. It's a political issue, of course, and we've seen like it's what's the real on the ground reality. You're making a decision, right?
The reason that I'm sort of just digesting your question is because we're talking about a park that we don't even know if we have yet,
Sure, but
and we're
if that
simply
park does come out, like if that park comes, like hypothetical, that park is there, yes or no? Don't get into like I don't know, yet, blah blah blah. We got to get to like the point here, right? Yes or no? We are dealing with a serious issue here, right? I mean,
the again tonight we're talking about a vision for Canada Square, I, I care just as much as you about making sure that there aren't, violent or forcible evictions of people in parks in our city. But I think our focus has to be ensuring that residents who are experiencing homelessness have opportunities for, truly affordable housing. And if there are individuals who have addiction or mental health needs, that they have access to those the supports. And it's a far more complex question, and it should be a far more detailed answer than simply yes or no. So I'd like to return to the community to conversation tonight about the future of Canada Square, but I know I speak for everybody here that there is the values of Midtown Toronto supports everyone, whether you are housed or experiencing homelessness, and that we all want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to access affordable housing, along with any care that anyone needs to be able to go on the path that they should be on in life. So I'll hand it back to you, Alex.
Thanks, Councillor. Robert, any other hands up?
Yep, I have Brenda Vernon. Go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you. I've been waiting patiently. I just want to, can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I just want to express my wholehearted support to Quora's and the Midtown Working Group's vision for the Canada Square project. I've lived here for 14 years, and we do not need in that square more residential. I think it's, as one of the councillors said, it's unrealistic to think that it'll only be 20% versus 78, but somewhere in between can be negotiated. We do desperately need green space. We need amenities as as the vision proposes. And I think the idea of the road from Berwick to Duplex could be reconsidered and maybe make it a walkway, well, pedestrian, a bicycle friendly walkway with green space. So that's possible. And I just think we're really way too crowded right now with more residential, with the growth projections for the neighborhood and all the developments that are going up. Not against development, but everyone who lives here knows that every parcel of land another tower is being built. So let's be more creative. Yonge and Eglinton, this is an opportunity for a great vision, for a destination for that square, a town square, with entertainment and everything that you guys described. So I'm really hoping that this will come to pass. I just wanted to, again, express my support as a resident here, and yes, and there's plenty of places to live in the neighborhood. We don't, we don't need so many more residential per se. We need a mix, and we need things that serve the community. And I had a question similar to, I guess, Anne's, like, where do we go from here and how do we help move this along? Thank you.
Brenda, thank you for your very thoughtful comments and your very, very considerate question. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if we can give any assurance to those who are saying, we just need housing, Doug Ford is going to make sure that that's not a problem. The government is supporting lots and lots of housing at Yonge and Eglinton, so that shouldn't actually be a concern to you. What is a concern is to make sure that our quality of life keeps up with the pace of that growth. And this is our opportunity, Canada Square. So I really appreciate your understanding of that. As far as like where do we go from here and how you can support us, I mean, the fact that you're here, the fact that you're engaged, the fact that you're participating, is remarkable. And by the way, Councillor Robinson had another meeting that she had to be at, and that's why she's not here. But Councillor Robinson, Councillor Cole, and I, we are empowered by, like, when we go to council and we have a united front and we have residents like Andy and David and the whole working group supporting us, and residents like you, Brenda, it empowers us to be able to advocate on your behalf. So, please, like, stay engaged, read our e-newsletters. When you get a city notice, don't just throw it in the junk mail, read it. It might be about a meeting or information about something that's important to you. And honestly, just hearing your support is very very powerful too. So I really appreciate that. And frankly, and Mike, I know Mike and Jay always do this, and as do I. If we believe that we're getting to a point at a committee meeting or a council meeting that we are concerned that there could be a close vote or that we need the community to rally, we'll let you know. We did that before the committee meeting, as did some of the residents associations get the word out as well as that meeting approached. And if you sign up, I don't know which ward you're in, but if whichever ward you're in, sign up for the local councillors e-newsletter. And if you're interested in what we're all doing, sign up for us all, whatever you want. But if you want to stay in the loop, we'll let you know. And I really appreciate again your support.
I had a
Josh,
quick.
just want to comment on Brenda there.
Go ahead, Mike.
Again, only if you live in Midtown near Yonge and Eglinton do you appreciate what Brenda's saying about the amount of housing and residential. I'm sure Brenda, like a lot of people in between Stanley Knowles there, they have to wait for before the pandemic, 5 subway cars to get on the subway in the morning. That's the reality of everybody who's just jammed into this residential explosion. That's why we want people to work at Yonge and Eglinton and reverse the flow of transit traffic, so it just doesn't become one big jam up every morning where you can't get on the Yonge line at Eglinton, at Lawrence. You have to go all the way up to Wilson and beyond to get on. Yeah. And then you can imagine what's going to happen at this intersection when the Eglinton Crosstown is completed, and you've got 20,000 people in the morning unloaded at Yonge and Eglinton to go southbound, and then the extension of the Yonge line up to I don't know where they're going, Finch or whatever, beyond. I think beyond into Richmond Hill, whatever. So you can imagine
Lake Simcoe, Mike.
we have to have it. We have to have people that also work in the Yonge Eglinton area, so we don't all everybody jamming on the subway that won't have the capacity to basically get on at rush hour in the morning.
Thank you, Mike. And by the way, Brenda, you brought up an important point, in particular to what we're considering with respect to the road, the proposed road, which is part of the initial plan, which does give us some space to move. That if it's not necessary any longer to have that road, that could be opened up to provide more open space as well. So that's something that's on the table for consideration. I appreciate your comment on that. Andy, did you indicate you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just had another comment for Brenda. When City Council unanimously endorsed the division, we had more than 1,200 people write in. More than 1,200 residents. That is almost unprecedented, and I think it partially convinced the councils that this really was important. So you as residents have a lot more power than you think you do. And I wanted to thank everybody that that wrote in and let them know how important that was. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy. That was important to say. So Alex and Robert?
So I have a question here. It's from Ethan from MPP Jill Andrews' office. And he's wondering what the definition, and this is, I think, for Andy or David, what the definition used here for affordable housing is. Also, while the Oxford proposal has 2,700 units, you only mention percentage within the Midtown Focus Group's proposal. Roughly how many residential units would this new plan have?
Do you want to speak to it, Andy, or would you like me to?
Sure. If we go by the numbers, if you took 20% of 2,700 units, that's about well over 500 units. If you talk 25% of that, it's well over 100 units that would be affordable. And affordable would be probably more described by the city. It is an average rate, below an average rate that is being tracked. And please correct me, Alex, if I've got that wrong. So we're talking about well over 100 units, and Typically, we might see more like 5 to 10% units of quite a short duration.
Yeah, by the way, to be clear, it now that the province is finally allowing the city to move forward with inclusionary zoning at certain locations, only if it's within proximity to a transit node, not every part of the city. Only soon will the city be able to actually insist that there will be 10% affordable housing below market based on the CMHC average. That being said, though, currently the city can negotiate, ask, request, hope that it achieves affordable units out of a development, but it can't actually, it doesn't have the tool in the toolbox yet to kind of say you must. So what this community is asking for is actually an unprecedented number, not 5%, not 10%, but an entire quarter of any housing be genuinely affordable and actually at a price that more people can afford. And what we know is that more and more people are paying 50, 60, 70% or more of their annual income into rent. And they just can't afford these luxury prices anymore, as Mike Cole spoke very eloquently about earlier. So back to you, Alex and Robert.
Robert, is anyone with their hand up?
Yes, I have Michael I. Michael, go ahead.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody?
Well, thank you. Welcome.
I'm gonna take a couple of seconds to frame my question, and then I'll ask my question. The fundamental problem is that, as I see it, is every development is generating a demand, or a demand whether for infrastructure, whether it's a physical infrastructure, whether it's a community infrastructure, whether it's a green space or whether it's park space. And then a good development, at least in my mind, should try to reach a balance between the supply and the demand. This is true not just for Canada Square, it's true for every development in our area here in Midtown. Now, going back to and I know Alex and through your office, Council Madlow, we're having a meeting to discuss specifically the infrastructure stuff on the 26th. But I'm going to frame the question in a more from the legal point of view.
Sure.
The Midtown in Focus plan, as it stands today, after Amendment 405, it doesn't look at it, take the density out, take everything else out. We're looking at an infrastructure that is explicitly defines what the infrastructure requirements are to establish, to meet the goals and the vision that the province has set and the city has set for the Midtown. So what I'm seeing here is the mismatch between supply and demand. The demand for infrastructure, the supply of infrastructure, whether it's physical infrastructure, whether it's schools, whether it's community centers, whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals, and on, green spaces, and everything that everybody mentioned. Why can we not go back to the plan and say to the province, you're approving this demand, why can't you meet the supply, come with the supply, and is there a legal course to force the point?
Oh, thanks. It is such a wonderful question, and here's the answer. So you may or may not have heard me speak at other meetings about what I believe is the import of having a city charter, meaning to have the ability for the city of Toronto to have real control over things like its finances, its elections that the Supreme Court just ruled against us on, and land use planning. Priorities that I think most people like you may already sort of assume cities in Canada have purview over. Intuitively, you would think that we do. People will often write to Mike and myself and say, just stop that development. And Mike and I would be like, well, you know, it's either going to be decided at council, or as Mike said, it would go to the Ontario Lands Tribunal, which is the most recent name for the OMB, and be approved by a bunch of people who are sitting in Sudbury who used to be on a mining tribunal. I mean, that's the reality of how it works today. So, cities in Canada are constitutionally, legally creatures of their respective provinces, which is wrong. It was, not to digress too far, but I mean, this was set up back when, 1867, when Canada was an agrarian society. Cities were an afterthought. Well, guess what? 80% of us live in cities now. It's out of date. It doesn't work. It's not functional. So we can tell the province, and we do. Mike, Jay, and I have moved several motions, making very clear statements, making real requests. We advocated for the Midtown and Focus plan along with our community here. But they don't have to listen to us. And, Mike mentioned build. What Mike didn't do was explain what build is. Build is the development lobby. And they don't just figuratively, I think they literally rewrite a lot of the things that we send the province. The province has to sign off on what we do, which is wrong. But so to say it really plainly, what we have to do is elect a provincial government that isn't in the pockets of the development industry, that will actually put communities first, that when we create a secondary plan like Midtown and Focus that focuses on our needs, that they don't rewrite it because a development industry lobbyist lawyer said, hey, change that wording and take out anything to do with schools and quality of life. In a nutshell, we can't tell the province what to do because they own us, they own cities in Ontario. We need a different dynamic and a different power relationship. And until that happens, we're going to run into the same problems. Mike?
I want to piggyback on what Josh, and I think the questioner made a very good point, is why isn't there a balance between the supply of housing and the demand there is for public amenities, public infrastructure? And I think the province has been very clear on that. They don't think there should be a balance. They've categorically passed legislation to say we don't need to have infrastructure and we don't need to have city input in planning. All you have to do is the emphatic statements they made with Bill 108. Ministerial zoning orders, unprecedented. I think we're up to 35 ministerial zoning orders. We used to get one of those every 20 years. We have the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is even more powerful than the OMB. And then again, Midtown and Focus, well, they ripped the plan up and threw it in our face and came in with their 405, which basically opens the door for more development, et cetera, et cetera. So the province has already said, we don't care about balance. All we care about is build, 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 and sky's the limit. Density is not a problem. Build, build, build. So they've answered your question.
So let's advocate to change that. So back to you, Alex and Robert.
So I'm just conscious of the time. I wanted to read a couple comments. I think we'll take one or two more hands that are up as well. But if you could just provide us with your comments, that way we can sort of get through a little bit more. There was a comment here about what size of green space was being recommended for Canada Square, and that we quoted a number. I think it's about 1,900 square meters proposed by the developer now. The existing planning zoning bylaw on the site is 2,500 square meters, and the city is asking for 4,000-ish square meters. There's a comment here from Andre who is asking if the city's built so much supply when only 5% of the city area allows major growth to begin with. Perhaps they should support more gentle density across the rest of Toronto. But until then, that happens, we will have to support maximizing housing in small areas like Yonge and Eglinton. And there was a question here about, as the process moves forward, will community members continue to be actively involved in negotiations with the developer and site planning? Yes, of course, we want to bring we want to connect the developer to the community. I mean, I think our next step would be to have a community consultation on the development application and put the application in front of you, and so you can speak directly to them and get them to take your comments and start actively being a part of that negotiation. And Robert, are there any hands up that we can get to while I search for another comment here?
Yeah, we have James Jurins. James, go ahead.
Yep.
Hey, James.
So, hi. So I'd just like to say that as a resident of Yonge and Davisville, this all comes down on us as well. And we've been in many meetings with many of our other residents. And, you know, we support exactly what you're doing, what your vision is. We want to thank you all for all the hard work that you put into this. And basically, I think what we're talking about here, which I don't see mentioned anywhere, is the soul of our area. And thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
And yeah,
I just want to mention, you know, speaking as a Yonge and Eglinton resident myself, slash, you know, Yonge and Davisville, I live in the heart of it. It is about the soul, and you know, I think it's a beautiful way to put it. That it shouldn't just be about building buildings. It should be about building a community. And I won't get into too much hyperbole, but that is the vision in a nutshell. And I really appreciate you acknowledging that. So back, let's try to fit in. I'll close it up maybe at 8:26 if we can fit in maybe one or two more.
Sure, I have a
Call it
few more hands up.
Soul Square.
We'll put that on the list.
Robert Johnson.
I have Richard Vaughn next. Richard, go ahead.
Hi all, thanks so much for this very insightful meeting. It was nice to be part of it. Just a couple quick notes and a question. I support the push for a cohesive public square instead of POPs, which are never as nice. I also think it's important to push for the mentioned school and child care spaces, especially with the National Child Care Program on the way. There's going to be a lot of demand for child care spaces. As for the housing part of it, I agree that housing crisis is not going to be solved by supply on its own, but it's certainly a big part. Rents dropped last year by 20% because of the lower demand, and that allowed my wife and I to move into a 2-bedroom in the area, just a few blocks south of this development, which is great because now we have a child on the way. My question is, why don't we allow homeowners on the streets close by to the west and the east of this to replace their homes with, you know, 4-story apartments, so that we don't need as many of these, you know, 60-story buildings just in one block?
Well, I can tell you as your counselor, I completely agree with you. And I really, you know, you make such a good point because there doesn't have to be a trade-off. And I think that's sort of, you know, there are some who suggest that it's kind of all or nothing. In other words, to hire the bigger, the better, or, you know, you are a NIMBY and you don't care about housing. That's not an honest description of the debate that I think we are having as a city. I don't agree that many of our avenues, for example, main streets, should stay at 2 stories for eternity. And there should be opportunities for more mid-rise, as we are doing on Yonge Street, right near where you live, where you suggested that you just moved into. And there will be, and there's an active study being done, led by the chief planner, on addressing the yellow belt in the middle and the missing middle. So it's not sort of an either or. Of course, there should be opportunities for more housing, in particular, more affordable housing. And it doesn't mean that everywhere that it's 2 stories should remain 2 stories. We are, you know, we're going to look more like Paris on Yonge Street, right? Rather than LA. That's where we're heading. But it also doesn't mean that every building has to be 60 stories. So I appreciate that you understand that. And, you know, there will be opportunities. If we were successful at meeting the needs of the missing middle, ensuring that we have mid-rise on streets like Eglinton and Yonge and elsewhere, we will be meeting the demands of the population growth that we're going to be receiving. But I'll just reiterate, whether there be 2 people in a neighborhood or 2 million people in a neighborhood, everybody needs access to a school and affordable childcare and all these things that we all agree on, and parks, etc. So that's what we're trying to do at Yonge and Eglinton. And lastly, you mentioned you're having a baby soon, and congratulations. And I look forward to seeing you in the neighborhood.
Thank you so much. And
You're
and
welcome.
you mentioned Paris, and I always think of that because I've
Yeah.
been there a couple of times and I love it. And one thing that always sticks out to me is it's not just 6-story buildings there on the Young streets and the Bloor streets, but also on all the residential streets. And I love walking down them, and they're beautiful. And I hope that in the future we'll have that here on residential streets.
And it's probably not going to be all or nothing, right? Like it's not, that's not going to work on every residential street. But will there be more opportunities? Of course. But you got to get it right, and there's got to be reasonable transition. And that's the discussion we're having right now as a city. But to sort of say like everything has to be one thing or everything has to be another thing doesn't recognize the diversity of different types of housing and needs that we have in this city. So, I hope that if all of us bring down the rhetoric and really just have thoughtful discussions with each other about how to meet the housing crisis along with many other crises that are happening concurrently in our society these days, then we can find solutions. But kind of the all or nothing approach doesn't often arrive at a solution. And you seem to get that, and I respect that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, as Josh said, you're not going to solve Toronto's housing crisis at Yonge and Eglinton, and that you have to look beyond, and that's why we are building mid-rises. Come over to Marley Avenue one day. We've got about 6 mid-rise developments taking place. On Lawrence Avenue West, we've got mid-rises and townhousing taking place. On Eglinton West, 6-story mid-rises are taking place. And on Dufferin, we've got about 8 mid-rises going on for approval right now, 8 mid-rises. So it's just take a bike ride up Dufferin or Marley, and you can see the mid-rises are being built.
Thanks, Mike, and many walk-ups as well, which give people opportunities to live in all sorts of neighborhoods too, which we already have, and I expect that there'll be more of in the future. So listen, I should wrap it up. First, I want to thank our planning staff for the work that they did on their report and the support that they've been providing our working group throughout this process. And we will be working very closely with our planning staff as we move forward through this process. I want to thank my colleagues, Councillors Cole and Robinson, for their advocacy and their leadership. It has been a learning opportunity for the three of us as well to really work as a team. And I'm really enjoying that, and I really appreciate that. And I look forward to continuing in that spirit together with both of them as we move forward to advocate for our common goal, which is the best interests of our community. And as was said earlier, the residents, David and Andy, along with all of the other members of our working group, and as Andy was very considerate to say, the thousands of people in our neighborhoods who have been part of that advocacy. it's amazing. It's like it's so empowering because I think it's been said enough times tonight, that the cards are stacked against us. The system is deliberately set up to favor the developer's interests. It's not a fair playing field. But we as a community are doing everything we can, finding every tool in the toolbox. If there isn't the tool there, we go and create one, but we're doing it. And no matter where we arrive at, I believe we are going to be far better than where we started with the question of Canada Square. So I want to, and by the way, not just planning staff, I should acknowledge all of our staff, our office staff, along with park staff and all the other city staff who've been part of this discussion, along with Creatia. So listen, thank you everybody for being part of this discussion tonight. And this discussion is not over. We have a long way to go. So as I said, the councillors, along with our residents groups and everybody else, we will keep you in the loop with what we're doing, and always feel welcome to reach out to us if we can be of any assistance, or if you have any opinions that you'd like heard. So thank you so much. Stay well, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you in our neighborhood soon. Thank you, and have a good night.
All right, I've recorded everything. Guess if you guys wanna have like talk about this after. Now it's time for talking NIMBY. Yeah, go inside of the MNTO like Discord. Go inside of Lounge and we can just chat there. Okay. Yeah, I'm in the lounge. Saeed, you're on stream. We just hey, Enrique.
Less Saeed.
That was great. You gave like he had no choice but to just go next question. Everybody, you're all on stream by the way. Um
Hi, Twith.
just so you know, because I don't want it to be a surprise. If you start talking shit and okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
This meeting is being recorded. Yeah, I know. Dude, did he just at the end tone police us in terms of how we should be talking about a housing crisis?
Yes, that's how I interpreted it.
That's literally what happened. Like he was just like, "Oh yeah, well you should be talking about housing like this. You should. It's not an all or
Get
nothing.
over all the rhetoric.
Get over all the rhetoric." Yeah.
And what I find really interesting is when you asked that question, Sushil, he was like, "Oh, but we're talking about this development right now." And then when this other guy said, "We don't have schools and infrastructure," he was like, "Oh, but you need to understand that we need a charter city and we need to do this and we need to do that," and he just went off on his rant.
Yeah. It's just like okay, let's look at this area. Like what's the land area again? Like map. Let's go to maps.google.com. I'm streaming this shit now. So it's like on Young and Egg, if I
Yes,
recall
the
correct.
southwest corner.
Southwest corner. Yeah, and that place is zoned for like. So let's take a look at the zoning as well.
Yeah, the thing is, like, there is a lot of density there, but like immediately as you take like a 5-minute walk outside of that,
Yeah,
like
there's
the other side
nothing.
of duplex is just houses.
Yeah, like let's look at it. Just oh my, that's Bathurst. My bad.
You're almost there.
Other side.
East, go east.
East. Oh yeah, I'm going all the way to the wrong side. Okay.
I mean, frankly, these are like
Yeah,
massive projects, but like,
you just had it.
Yeah.
are you guys on the Twitch stream?
Yeah, this is on Twitch stream, just so you know. I'm still
If we go
streaming
to
right now.
that.
But like I'm going over. Oh Jesus Christ. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna type in. Oh, Henrique, look at this. 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 I'm sorry. Sorry for
What?
bringing that up.
Can you not give them publicity on their stream?
Young and egg. Sorry, sorry, buddy. Sorry. Yeah. So we're
What
talking
are
about
they?
like this area, right? And
Yeah, the southwest.
yeah.
Where your mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's like mixed use right now, and then like a bunch of TTC property. So I mean, any housing is a win over what's there now, I guess. But like, there's
Yeah.
the opportunity to do a lot, right? Like, I'm not even saying they couldn't have a park or whatever, but I think like to be so against housing, it's true it's a really fast growing area, and like I know that they are having trouble keeping up with infrastructure. But
Yeah.
again, that's like part of how they zone everything, right? Like if you don't build here, you can't build anywhere else.
Yeah, and let's actually look at the zoning map because like these are the things that they were complaining about. They kept complaining about the fact that there's so much development going there. But then I looked at the zoning map earlier. Um And there's a very good reason as to why that's happening.
Yeah, they
It's one
showed
of
it at the
their
beginning of
urban
the
growth
meeting.
centers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an
They
urban growth
literally
center.
showed it at the beginning of the meeting, and like the
Like, look at
planner
this.
literally said, like, here are the places where it's going to grow, and here are the
Yeah.
stable neighborhoods where there's going to be like no growth.
Yeah, and you look at it, and you look at this area. This is gray, meaning you can do whatever the fuck you want with this land, for the most part. So it's like, why do you zone it like this, so that density only goes in these gray and red spots? And then the moment you like asked them, hey, maybe you should just upzone everything, they fucking flip out,
I mean,
right?
that was the same guy who opposed like a 5-story development near Yonge and St. Clair, right? Like, I mean, if he's talking about putting homes in other places and not just building everything in Yonge and Eglinton, then you
M-
just bring that up. Like,
Matlow
there's
opposed a 5-story building.
honestly, I can't remember it, but it was like it was definitely under 10. It was a really small
Oh my
development, just
god.
like 10 minutes northwest of Yonge and St. Clair.
There's
I
also a
think
townhouse complex at Mount Pleasant and Eglinton that he opposed like 2 years ago.
Oh my god. A
No, it's just
townhouse
Like
complex.
it was like 30 units of townhouses.
Has there ever been like a anything that he's like supported to build in his neighborhood? Like, I don't get it.
He supported this one like temporary homeless shelter. That's like all I can think of during COVID.
Man, I think
yeah, he supports the ones that they're really obviously affordable, meaning
yeah,
subsidized, and so like he scores points that way by opposing the market ones.
yeah, that makes sense.
It's just trickle down economics.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
There's the 14-story one at Young and Davisville, right next to the subway station that he opposed. And when someone on Twitter was like, "This is necessary," he's like, "Oh, that's just trickle down economics." Like he used that language.
Oh my god.
Wait, did he say that?
I'd have to find the tweet, but yeah, he was on Twitter.
What an absolute, just what an asshole.
Because you posted a video of that one, right? That was the one where he was saying, "Oh, this is 14 stories tall. This is blah blah blah."
Find it.
Not right for the area, etc.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Doug Ford, but like, if they want to spite upzone everything in his neighborhood, like I'm all for it. Um, man, do not like Matt Lau. Just in this experience with, like, I think this is the first time I actually like spoke to him. I've only ever seen his tweets before, but like this first time like I asked him a question, but like, oh my god, he doesn't answer anything. He doesn't fucking answer anything.
Yeah, I posted his little tweet thread, and I think he posted that in response after his like a consultation meeting for a 14-story mixed-use building at Young and Davisville.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that the whole city charter thing is something that Matlow is going to run with.
Province of Toronto.
Yeah, like I don't see how, like, I think these counselors are kind of getting like a little bit of a, especially like Josh, like he said specifically like, oh, we want to have provincial, a provincial party that will actually allow for a charter city. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I think all three main parties are being pushed towards a more kind of YIMBY perspective, in their own ways, and I feel like I don't think Josh is gonna get what he wants, you know?
I don't think he will either, because there's no interest at the federal or provincial level to let municipalities have more power.
Precisely.
So it's sort of like a pipe dream that he's going to probably try to run like a campaign on, sort of like how Jason Kenney in Alberta is going to run on equalization, even though there's nothing he can do about it. It's one of those.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say that initially he felt this way, but like for a long time, he was one of the few people pushing for an LRT in Scarborough, and he was against the Scarborough subway. And initially, because I thought, it's a better use of funds, that it would be better. But like he was still doing it long after it was pretty much settled. So I don't know if sometimes he just like picks these issues that are really like politically popular to get like a bit of traction. But
Well, I think that's pretty much guaranteed that he won't win if he runs for mayor since he's earned no friends in Scarborough.
Yeah. And I'm sure like a lot of people just don't like him either. I know a lot of people associated with the mayor don't like him. I've heard that he's just hard to work with in city council, and so people
Well,
just
I mean, I
don't.
guess he's opposed like a lot of things that Tory has championed, like the subway and that kind of thing. But I
Yeah.
mean, if it turns out to be an election where people are kind of like, oh, we're sick of Tory, maybe he picks up on that. I don't know.
Hot take. I would take Matt Lowe over Tory.
Yeah, I think I would too.
I honestly just don't want to think about it,
I
and
I I just want
I
Jennifer
hope that
Keesmaat to
there
run.
is someone. She's not going to.
Before I voted for her a couple years ago.
He's
But
not. Oh yeah, she says she's not anymore.
yeah,
that sucks.
she's not going to. But I hope someone miraculously comes out of like the woodwork to like. If this is a Tory Matlow election, and then the provincial election is shaping up to look like what it's going to look like, it's kind of going to be bleak. Like, not that everyone is terrible, but that just nobody is that great.
I think what we really need is for Tory to just not run and then open up the field for multiple new people. He
I
hasn't
think you're
committed
right.
one way or the other, but apparently he said that his wife doesn't want him to run, but he's thinking about running again anyway.
I feel like as long as we focus on trying to solve this municipally, we're just never going to solve it. I think it's just
It's not gonna happen.
it's not going to happen. It's got to be provincial. It's got to be kind of that top down, changing, like just kind of simplification of all sorts of land use planning rules across every city in Ontario. And I think that's really the structural solution we can hope for. Um, yeah, and just banning single family only zoning.
How frustrating is that the only party that has that is the Green Party, who's never gonna win an election?
They had that last time too, I think, like last election.
The
So
last provincial Greens?
yeah, they were pretty good on housing as well.
Yeah, they are. They're like
Yeah.
pretty good actually.
So I think it's just a matter of like
Getting the mainstream parties.
yeah, like everybody
The
else
House
kind of
and Home
catching
do
on.
that.
But I think
Mhm.
the goal is like, whichever party you're most closely aligned to, just um you just got to bug people, I feel.
Yeah,
You just
just
got to
push for
keep
that.
bugging people, keep pushing, make it known to like even like if you're in the party and you know people in the party, like black pill them on housing, like just I feel like the moment every time I've explained to people just like um how housing impacts us and how which rules are in place that kind of prevent the provision of new housing, I feel like they start seeing the way the built that like the city around them differently,
Oh yeah,
right?
totally.
Like it's a game changer. Like I feel like Henrique, I just ranted with you about housing this whole year, and now you hate everything.
Just burn it down. Zoning anarchy. That's what we need. All right. No
Yeah,
rules. 10 years.
I have super partisan like conservative friends that have done the same thing. They're like fully black pilled now.
Yeah.
Same with like leftist and liberal friends. Like if you
Yeah,
get through to them, they'll like see it, no matter
exactly.
where they're from.
Exactly. There's just a way to like take that information and like let them know about it in a way that, fulfills whatever their ideological priors are, right?
Exactly.
Because it is both an issue of red tape and it's also an issue of class, right?
Mm.
You can go about it in so many ways.
Yeah, like you can relate it to pretty much anyone, no matter where
Yeah.
they are. if you know how.
And I find like usually if they're younger, they're just more receptive to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
They're already like halfway black-pilled about like housing because they're like 20 and are never gonna own a home.
Exactly.
That's like the easy in.
So I mean, I don't know where these counselors. It's like it's truly like let them eat cake energy coming from them.
I was so triggered when the issue of like maintaining housing price and growing housing value was brought up.
Yeah, and they didn't even answer my question. I was like, yes or no, do you support that? And they were like, of course they wouldn't answer, right?
Yeah,
You can.
they'd say it in the presentation, but when you ask them point blank, like,
Yeah, they kind of weaseled around. They're like, oh, well, in 20 years, the neighborhood's going to decline and values are going to drop. Like, that's not what you said 10 minutes ago. That this is going to, like, reduce property values.
Was that guy like
Honestly,
a
I'm shocked that
David?
you even said it in the presentation. That was the first for me seeing that.
Is David a planner?
Hey guys,
think
that
he-
guy who asked the question about like the baby and like uh building on avenues essentially, or building to look more like Paris, the one at
Yeah.
the end, that was Kara Stern's husband.
Wait, whose husband?
Oh, nice. He was good.
Yeah, she just messaged me, like the More Neighbors Twitter about that.
I wondered because I think this site is actually the TVO building, and I was like, I wonder if they're like not allowed to report on it or something if they're like in the building.
It is the TVO building, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there was a couple of them on there, and she was like, you know, when he went off about Young Street looking like Paris, she was like, my husband wants all the streets to look like Paris, not Young Street.
I mean, it'd be great if all streets looked like Paris. That would be great for affordability.
Just look at Montreal. It's the exact same thing, but like
Yeah.
3 to 4 stories.
Precisely, yeah. I was born in Montreal. I love it there.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, I went there recently. It's amazing.
And they don't have like tall condo buildings either, like super tall ones that they complain about here, because you can build a fourplex in suburbia and nobody
That's
bats an
insane.
eye.
Even their suburbs are so much more dense.
Some of those suburbs, not all of them.
Not
Not
all.
all of them.
If you
No, but
look
like
at if you looked at the off-topic channel,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean,
like they already built a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So they have it.
Yeah.
Or it's like building new
Yeah.
ones. It's so hard
Yeah.
for them.
What I'm concerned about in Montreal is that, they've done well in the past. I'm from Montreal as well, but I'm concerned about them resting on their laurels and not really moving forward. And it comes for all cities. Montreal's experiencing a boom growth now, and eventually you have to start thinking beyond that and building more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh man. Anyway, I'm gonna go have dinner, so I'm gonna be ending stream now.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop off too.
Yeah.
Good stuff, guys.
Yeah, this was great.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Night, everyone.
And I'm gonna clip that after it's done. I'm gonna make a highlight, and feel free to clip all the Josh Matlow clips you want.
Can't wait.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, take care.